Good day to you this June 3rd, 2021. I am Pastor Neil Weemus, and this is more or less the restoration of a podcast I did many years ago on through SoundCloud and various things, and I'm just doing this through the YouTube means, incorporating the visual aspect as much as I can, without too much work, because it's just me talking about. And to give you a step back in the podcast, as you saw right at the title before, it was the Chi-Rho Film Society. And the whole idea of the podcast was to just look at movies, from a Christian world perspective. And so that's why I identify right away, hey, I'm a pastor. So in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. So that gives you an idea as to what my worldview is going to be. And so I'm not going to have any schedule. It's just basically going to come down to, did I watch a movie or a couple episodes of a TV show or whatever? And that's just what it's going to be. And I'm just going to, put it up, get the screen going, and I'll just talk through it and just talk through my thoughts of the episode. I'd love to put up some cool little videos up at the corner and all that, but again, that takes time and work and worried about copyright issues and all that fun jazz. So as you can see in the background, we are going to be talking about the movie The Way Back. This was the movie I watched this evening. And so I'm actually going to try to review these almost as soon as I watch the movie, so it's fresh in my mind. And this is a movie I've seen many times in my life, many times before. So it's not like a brand new one, but I watch it, especially as we get closer to the summer, because it's a movie. It's your typical coming of age summer movie, and it's about this kid Duncan who is going with his mother, his mother's boyfriend, and his mother's boyfriend's son to spend the summer at this cabin on the beach. And I think it's supposed to be in Massachusetts or somewhere in Rhode Island or somewhere like that. I can't remember exactly where. But it does not take you long to figure out the plot, the situation that's going on. Is Duncan, it takes you a matter of moments, actually. And so pretty much the first scene, and this is why it's called The Way Back, where the title comes from, is it starts out there in this old-fashioned station wagon. And I kind of like that little touch because the movie is definitely taking place in modern day, but they kind of are invoking the memories of those good old summer movies. Some movies such as The Great Outdoors with John Candy and Dan Aykroyd, movies like that. And so it's definitely invoking that time, or Chevy Chase's the vacation movies. And so it's definitely invoking that. And so anyways, they're driving on the highway and they're on their way to the beach. And there's this point where Steve Carell, who is playing the role of the boyfriend, and I should note on Steve Carell, he does a great job. And it's one of those movies where Steve Carell does a really, really good job of getting you to hate him. All right? There are a few moments when you're watching it at times that kind of start to see a little bit of Brick from Anchorman, I have trouble shaking that image at moments, or even the images of Michael Scott from The Office. But all in all, he does a great performance. And for a guy that's usually generally pretty likable in most of his movies, most of his shows, he does a great job of coming off as a total jerk. And so anyway, so they're in the car, and I called him Michael Scott. Steve Carell's character is in the front seat. He's driving. Duncan's mom is asleep. The girl, Steve Carell's, I don't know his character's name. I'll get the name eventually. But Steve Carell's character is his daughter's asleep as well. So the only ones that are awake are Steve Carell's character and Duncan. And he asks the question. He says, "Hey, Duncan, tell me, what are you? What are you on a scale of 1 to 10? What are you?" And he's like, "What? What kind of question is that?" And you can see the sadness and the grief on the eyes of Duncan, that he knows what to anticipate, that this is going to be a bad experience. It shows the kind of he's already got the experience with the type of person that this Duncan is, or Duncan, the Steve Carell's character is, and so he's waiting for the answer. And so he finally Duncan says, "Well, I don't know, a 6." He just kind of caves in, and Steve Carell says, "Well, you know what? I think you're a 3." Wow. That's awful to say to anybody. That they're a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever. And so that sets up the story. That he is dealing with the situation. His mother is alone. She wants to be with someone. And she's found companionship apparently in Steve Carell's character. But the son, Duncan, is not having a good time with him. He's seeing the guy's kind of a bit of a jerk, and he's been on the receiving end of that being a jerk. And so that's the story that you have. And it ends up being a great story. And like I said, it's very much a coming of age. This kid trying to figure out who he is. He trying to figure out if he matters to him, and he cares about him. And it honestly ends up playing as a really, really good story, and really well played on so many different performances. Whether it be, I'm gonna have to look up these actors. Let me see. Let me pull these up. Okay, so I had to bring this up onto the screen. I had to look up the names of the actors and the characters. Okay, so Steve Carell's character was Trent. All right, and so Trent is this jerk. They get to town. They get to the cabin. But one of the things I thought was really subtle is a little moment, and this is where he ends up he's a supporting actor. Or supporting character, but he ends up being a very, very big character in the film. Is the performance and that's Sam Rockwell's character Owen, and while they're driving to the Riptide, the Trent's cabin where they're staying for the summer, they stop for a moment at a light. And Duncan is facing backwards, and the reason, like I said, it's the reason it's called the way back is so Trent and Pam, who's Duncan's mother, they're sitting in the front row, and Steph, which is Trent's daughter, is in the second row, and then there's Duncan, so he's in the way back. And so he's in that way back seat, and he's facing backwards, and he sees Owen, and I think he's trying not to make eye contact, and I kind of get this because it's kind of awkward, like because Owen's in a convertible, and so he's trying not to make an eye contact, and he's way down by the conversation he had with Trent when Trent called him a 3. And he looks at Owen, and Owen just gives a little bit of a smile, and it's just enough to give a smile to Duncan, who's being weighed down by the family situation he's in. And I like that just little subtle moment. You don't know it's Owen yet. I mean, unless you've read the cast or whatever. If you'd never seen the movie, you just know it's this guy that gave a nice smile to him. And it's one of those things that after you've seen the movie, it makes more sense and it gives a little bit more meaning to it. But it is a nice little thing of like how a smile can be for a person. Just smiling to them. somebody you never know the people you come across in life. You never. I know it's cliche, and you see it on Facebook memes or whatever, and it's cliche, but the truth is that you never know what someone else is going through, and you never know. I mean, it seems so small, but sometimes maybe just a smile can be something that carries somebody through that day, even or through that moment. They may be struggling just to get through that moment, and that smile may be the thing that carries them through. So it was a very and so they get to the Riptide, and they get to the cabin, and they meet the characters Betty, played by Allison Janney, and she does it. She's so good at her role. Very over the top type character, and she's that type of character. She's kind of weird to be around, and sometimes people kind of might avoid her at times just because she might be a little bit on the obnoxious side. But the thing I love in this film is, as you watch through the story, is you realize that this Betty person is the most authentic person. It's one of the most authentic people that come across. Because one of the things you realize, especially with Trent and Steph, or the person you later find, Joan, these people are very plastic. They're fake. They're not the real selves. They're covering up. And you meet this character, Betty, who like I said, she kind of comes off as a bit of obnoxious she's that falling over drunk person. We know those types. But in this case, she ends up being the most genuine and good-natured character, one of the good-natured characters that eventually Pam will need as the story progresses. And of course, you meet Susanna, who is Betty's daughter, and she ends up being the crush, so to speak, to Duncan, and that plays out to be a good story. And one of the things I should actually make note, I mentioned it a little bit ago, is the character of Steph. That's the daughter of Trent. She has lines, she has her moments, and she definitely plays that mean girl type character, or that she's got kind of a cross between Mean Girls and Clueless type thing. Like, come on, Susanna, I really needed to talk to someone. That whole type of thing. That personality type. She's got that going. But every now and then, there's little subtle moments that you see. There might not be entirely a bad person in there, but she's a child that's got a really messed up family situation. And, her dad she said it, she sees him twice a year. That came up in the early part of the film, if I remember correctly. She said she sees him twice a year. And he spoils her, but and that 2 times he's with her, he's barely with her, right? And so her relationship is not exactly the best. I loved it in this. There's a scene, so I'll get to that a little bit. You kind of get her. There's moments where you see her, you meet her decency, when they're playing Candyland, that comes up later. She seems to be not entirely falling apart. And another case was when they're eating dinner, they're washing dishes when Trent hasn't come home. So there's a few moments and that's when you realize that something's really going on with Trent, and the things are falling apart. I'll get to that. Again, she shows her humanity in that moment. And one of the things I liked in the movie is they are so good at communicating the isolationist situation you could feel. You could have a table full of people, and you feel completely alone. And one of the and so going back to the character Duncan and Liam James, who plays him, he does a very good job. He's a young actor. I don't know what he's all been in. Let me see. Let's bring that up. See if he's been in other movies. He hasn't really. The only movie he's been in since then was Speech and Debate. I don't know what that is. Might have to, I don't know if that was a good movie, bad. Sorry. This is kind of a sidetrack moment. I'm just seeing what on earth it is. But anyways, that was the last movie he was in. Was Speech and Debate, I guess. Otherwise, he really doesn't have much of in ways of credits. He's 24 years old now. The movie's 11 years old. Man, I can't believe it's already that old. So he would have been 13 years old when that movie came out. So he's a very young actor at the point of this film. And so I was looking to see how much. So Anna Sophia Robb, she's the girl. She would have been. So again, she would have been 20, so not quite as young, but still pretty young. But anyways, Liam James, like I said, he's a very young. He's 13 years old when that movie came out, and for a 13-year-old, he did a good job at the acting, and he's playing an introvert, and introverts. For those of you who don't understand how introversion works, I encourage you to go watch. I'll pull it up onto YouTube. There you can see the type of movies I watch, videos I watch. Oops. Watch this video, "The Power of Introverts" by Susan Kane. Right? If you get a chance, watch it. That's a great video to find out what introversion is. So. So she's an introvert, right? Or he is an introvert. Duncan is, and introversion is a personality where part of introversion is you struggle with small talk, and that's something that comes out quite often. He meets this girl. He knows there's something about her he likes. I mean, okay, she's cute. That probably plays into it. But I mean, actually, at the point she's 7 years older than him, so woo. Quite a little bit of a age gap. But the thing is when he's talking with her, and when he's trying to talk with her, he's not sure what to say. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to get the conversation going because that's introverts. Introverts are not good at small talk. A lot of times they'll, your typical introvert's going to revert back to the weather conversation, and that's what he did. I heard it's going to be a hot summer, and that's about all they could get to. And so, very well portrayed, well written. That struggle, but even still, as a kid, introverts, a lot of times the introvert has troubles figuring out who they are, what their life is, where they're going, and again, they played into this. And one of the things that a lot of times is so instrumental in a person breaking out and becoming the person they mean to be is working at a job. And so Duncan's character, Duncan goes one day. He's getting fed up with the situation that's going on with Trent, Duncan's mom, and now you have Kip and Joan. These adults who are acting like teenagers at summer camp. It is wearing on him, and so he leaves the house, and he doesn't want to go to the beach. He goes off, and he eventually finds his way to the water park, which is where Owen, Sam Rockwell's character, is working. And his character is great. Sam Rockwell, just steals the show with his character. And one of the things I liked about this is almost, I mean, he looks at Duncan and he sees a kid, um, that needs somebody, needs uplifting, and Owen takes it up. And one of the things you notice through the movie, is that's Owen's character. He is connecting with these kids. They're like, hey, Owen, is it true? Did somebody pass someone else on the slide? And he gets into this whole discussion. And all these people are connecting to them. All these people know Owen by name. And he's making even a small influence on these kids. But in the case of Duncan, he's having a chance to make a huge influence. And this is where, about a month ago, we had, teacher celebration week or whatever it was, celebrating the work that teachers did, and rightfully so. But I thought it would be, and I had thought about writing up a blog or a post on it or whatever, and I never got to it. But I wanted to talk about the unsung teachers, and that is a person like Owen's character, the character Sam Rockwell's character in The Way Back, the guy that works at a restaurant, or a gas station or whatever, and he's working with all these teenagers. People don't really talk about them very often as teachers, but they are. I relate quite a bit to Duncan's experience with this a little bit. Many of you, people who don't know me, even people who do know me, didn't know me when I was in high school, when I was a teenager. And when I was a teenager, I was very quiet, very reserved. And because the reason I can relate to the whole introversion thing, I'm an introvert. And I understand that difficulty of small talk. If you want to get into a deep, sophisticated conversation, so like this movie, if you wanted to sit there and say, hey, did you see that movie? What'd you think about it? Oh, sounds good. I can say, you just talk to me, tell us the movie is good or bad. That's boring to me. But if you're like, let's talk about the themes in this movie. Let's talk about the acting. Like, did you really like this? Did this really tell you this? Connect with this thing that you know about in life? Or, this one really connects really well with this theological belief or this philosophy. I like to talk about it, dig into it. You want conversations with meat, all right? You don't want conversations that are just fluff, bores, and introverts are bored by it and just frankly aren't very good at it. But the deep, meaningful, intellectual, the conversations are meaningful, meant like intellectually or emotionally. So it's head or heart. Your introvert's gonna love that. They thirst on that. They get energized by that. And so, but anyway, so like Duncan, I understood that experience of being quiet, reserved. And the thing that first got me to start breaking out of my shell was working at Golden Corral. And I will tell you that my manager, my boss at the time, Mark Gibson, was a person that was very instrumental in helping me break out of my shell. And I think I broke out of my shell even more when I moved on and worked at the movie theater in Ankeny. And so that is that's what you don't think about these employers, the teenagers, as being teachers, but they really are. These unspoken teachers have had impacts on kids, and nobody ever thanks them. Not many people thank them, and they deserve thanks. They deserve honor. They deserve praise. Like with Owen's the character of Owen, he's a mess up. This guy, his life is definitely not together. He's anything but perfect. He is deeply flawed. but yet through little gestures, little actions, little moments, he made an incredible impact on this 13-year-old. And I think this is why one of the reasons this movie so connects is because I love that character of Owen and the relationship between him and Duncan. And when I watch that, um, the ending, the scene where he's talking about that you got to go your own way, and he's talking about I don't like patterns because there's a discussion over Pac-Man when he met him as they're playing Pac-Man. He's like, there's a pattern, right? Oh, you're gonna be one of those guys. Takes all the fun out of it. It's like, go your own way. Don't anybody can memorize a pattern or whatever. And that's actually what you see in Owen. He celebrates people in the movie. You're seeing him celebrating each person in his life for their individuality, and it's almost. I mean, it's almost an odd version of Mr. Rogers, because that was what Mr. Rogers said. That was the whole cliche thing of Mr. Rogers. You are special exactly the way you are. And that is not this. It's not. I mean, I know that if you understand that the wrong way, that feeds into the narcissism epidemic of our culture. But it's our culture. It does have. I don't know if we're not. I don't think we're as bad as we were even 10 years ago. But I think we could easily revert into it. But there is a tendency to think that people are supposed to think a certain way. They're supposed to look a certain way, and we don't. We have a tendency to not embrace what makes a person unique. You are, as the whole Mr. Roger thing is, you are special the way you are. So you have the case of Peter, the kid. He's got a lazy eye, and his mother's wanting to hide it, and it creates some amusing little scenes. But when Owen meets him, he's like, "Oh, you could take that off," and he sees the lazy eye. He embraces it, and praises it, says it's a cool thing, and there's all and he makes it. He celebrates the uniqueness of Peter, and that is what God creates us. He puts us in a specific place in a specific time in our life. He gives us talents. He gives us specific parents, siblings, whatever, friends, for a purpose. And you have unique qualities. You have unique gifts that literally no other person has. You do. People have similar gifts, but you are in a specific. No one. So let's say, for example, me, and I'm not trying to, be egotistical or anything, but I'm going to use myself because it's easier to do in a video. Is I am the brother. I'm the youngest son of my dad and my mom. My parents are divorced. No one else in the world is the youngest of my mom and my dad. No one in the world is in that position, right? You two have a unique position, unique role in your life that literally no other human being has. And that is what we mean when we talk about the special, what it means to be special. And that's why I loved Owen's character, because he embraces that. And in the midst of, and through the movie, you have these really wonderful scenes where you see the difficulty that's going on for Pam, Duncan's mom. There's a scene at the very beginning. You see that she feels isolated. She feels separated. Even though she's got these people, she's having fun, she feels alone. She feels distant. There's a moment later. So the whole story is that eventually you find out Trent is cheating on Pam with Joan, and apparently it's something that he cheated. It had happened the summer before or whatever, and And what I found interesting is, like, again, talk about that isolationism, is that when Pam and Duncan and Steph are doing the dishes that night, when Trent is MIA, I found it, I kind of like the way they highlighted that Steph, for a moment, is now the one that's isolated. She's always got something, but that moment she's the isolated one, the lost one, doesn't know what is going on, where she's supposed to be. She's losing, and what her role is, she doesn't know. And but like I said, that was a moment where for a moment you see her humanized, because she actually takes care to help Pam, knowing that her dad is causing this pain. And for a moment, she actually shows empathy and care. And I thought that was a. I wish they would have done a little bit more with her character. But I know she was in the focus. But I thought that was kind of a neat, little subtle things that they would put into all the different roles, into all these characters. And again, it's kind of the reminder that people, that is a theme in the story, is that people are not always what meets the eye. Trent is a negative aspect of that. Trent, to certain people, is this good. Well, he's a salesman. I mean, you hear it. He's a car salesman. He gives sales pitches all the time to people, especially to Pam, to convince her. He's a classic narcissist. I mean, that's what he is. He's a narcissist. And so again, one of those characters that he's now what meets the eye. Same thing, you had that with Betty. You get that with Susanna. She turns out to be this really aware person. And I also even noticed, like, Duncan, going back to Duncan's character, so talk about the introvert. The type of introvert is, he's the wallflower introvert. If you've ever seen the film Perks of Being a Wallflower, you know what I'm talking about. He's that character that he sees a lot of things. Similar to, what's the main character? Perks of Being a Wallflower. I'm going to have to look that up. It's really bad because I've seen the movie so many times. Perks of Being a Wallflower. Charlie's character. So Charlie's character, Perks of Being a Wallflower, he's obviously a wallflower, a person who sees everything. So, like I said, this is a great movie. If you've never seen it, I don't feel like I'm really giving away stuff. I think these are some of those things. It's one of those movies that you probably could have seen some of this stuff coming. But again, the movie's been out for 9 years. But it is kind of one of those hidden movies. Not a lot of people taking the time to watch. People know Steve Carell. They know him as Michael Scott. And maybe they might have troubles with a character that you just hate. That is Steve Carell. But it's a good movie. A lot of good performances. Good actors. Good characters. And your like I said, classic coming of age. Your typical coming of age type story. But I think it's a good reminder of how to not take things by their cover, to embrace the uniqueness of others, and remember that no matter your place, no matter what your career is, no matter what you're doing in life, you could be used. You have opportunities around you, in your face. You have opportunities to make a difference in people's lives. You never know. Maybe, I mean, it is as simple as being kind to that employee at Subway or whatever. It might be if they're your employee. You know, every now and then, if you have that down hours, that downtime, have a conversation. Joke around with them. Show that you care about them. That you notice them. One of the things that they've done surveys is a lot of kids don't have adults that care about them beyond their parents. In some cases, they don't even have that, or maybe only one of the parents, and the other one is MIA. You never know who you may be. The person that God has placed into another's lives. You never know who it is, whose life it is that you've been placed into to make an impact on them. Pray that God would open your eyes. Pray that God would give you the wisdom to do so. Perhaps there is going to be your Owen. There's a Duncan in your life who might need your compassion and your care. You don't have to go to school or college or anything to be a Duncan. You just have to care. You just have to have empathy. Be authentic. Be you. And encourage people to also be themselves. Embrace what God has made them to be. Guide them and lead them to serve and be all that they can be. Don't settle, to not settle, as Owen would say. So, there's my reaction, my review, my analysis of this movie. I love watching, and like I said, I kind of get teared up most every time I watch it, just because, there's a lot of hurt in the world. There's a lot of broken relationships, and at times it's got some very touching, good moments. So, with that, I close, and I don't know what the next movie I'll watch is. Whatever it will be, that is what it'll be, and I'll do a similar setting as you saw, and I hope you enjoy. God bless. In Jesus' name, amen.